Internal Revenue Service IRS tax news. IRS sending letters to more than 36 million families who may qualify for monthly child tax credits. Payments start July 15th. So this is another big change that has taken place. It's a little bit confusing. Let me see if I can recap where we are at this point in time. So the child tax credit, as most people know, if you have the qualifying child, you may have an impact on your refund due to the child tax credit. It has been adjusted for 2021, which normally wouldn't be impacting us at this point in time because normally you wouldn't have an effect of it until you file the tax return, which typically would be done by April 15th of 2022. However, they have also said that they're going to try to do this prepayment type of thing again. So they've increased the amount of the child tax credit, and they've also made more of it refundable. I think these two things will make it easier for them to then estimate what the payment will be and then try to give some of it out in 2021 rather than waiting until we actually file the tax return for 2021 in 2022. So that's going to be the basic idea. Now they want to, of course, make people aware of the fact that they may qualify for this because they're going to actually be sending out checks, it looks like, or giving some kind of payments to people, and we want people to be aware of the payments that are going to be going out at this point in time. So that's my general recap. Let's see the details here. IR 2021-124, June 7, 2021, Washington. The Internal Revenue Service has started sending out letters to more than 36 million American families who, based on tax returns filed with the agency, may be eligible to receive monthly child tax credit payments starting in July. So they're actually going to kind of figure out, in essence, what the credit would be for the 2021 tax return, which would be filed in 2022, and then figure out how much they can basically send out as basically monthly payments. To do that, then, like with the earned income tax credit and like with the basically health plan type of credit for the medical insurance in the marketplace type of system, you have this system where they're going to try to estimate what will happen. They're going to have to do that based on prior returns. That would typically be the 2020 return or the 2019 return to predict what will happen in 2021, which should be easier to do given the fact that they increased the credit and made it basically refundable so that they can then send out the prepayments to people in monthly amounts and then hopefully reconcile this entire thing out when you file the tax return for 2021 in 2022 by April 15th generally. So the expanded and newly advanceable child tax credit was authorized by the American Rescue Plan Act, enacted in March. The letters are going to families who may be eligible based on information they included in their 2019 or 2020 federal income tax return, or who use the non-filers tool on IRS.gov last year to register for an economic impact payment. So again, you'd have to have qualifying children, of course, to qualify for this. And instead of waiting until you file the tax return in 2022 for the year 2021, they'll do like they did with the earned income tax credit. Look at the prior year, which for most people, if you have filed at this time, would be 2020, to see whether or not you had qualifying children at that time. That should be enough information for them to basically estimate the credit, although you could have income phase-outs that complicate this thing, and you could have situations where you have another child or another dependent came in the world here or became a dependent in 2021, which you might not get the prepayment for. They haven't really addressed that situation as to whether or not, as far as I can tell so far, maybe they will here. They have not yet addressed how you might be able to get more prepayment in that kind of instance. And also note, if they don't have the 2020 tax return, then of course they'd have to go back to the 2019 in order to send out the prepayment. Remember that they're basing this information on what they have, which would be the 2019 or 2020, even though the actual credit, and it's similar to the earned income tax credit, is tied to the 2021 tax return, which wouldn't be filed till 2022 by April, and then you're going to have to reconcile this thing out to reconcile the amount of payments versus the credit, the actual credit that you would calculate and determine if you get any more credit at the point in time you file the taxes. Now, If you didn't file the 2019 or 2020, but you filed the non-filer tool, possibly because your income is below the threshold, then they may still be able to pick you up in that case. However, also note that if you're in that category and you have a dependent for a qualifying child, you might benefit from filing the tax return because you might be qualifying for other credits, such as the earned income tax credit. So if you're in that situation, you might want the software, I believe, is still free for 2020 for people that are under a certain threshold. You can find the software on IRS.gov. It might be worth looking into to see if you would qualify for other credits, see if it's beneficial. So families who are eligible for advanced child tax credit payments will receive a second personalized letter listing an estimate of their monthly payment, which begins in July. So you should get a letter, and the IRS is going to inform you kind of what they're doing. If they don't do this, it's still going to be a shock, I would imagine, to many people because they're just going to start getting monthly payments, which would be from the IRS, which is kind of weird because usually you think of yourself as paying them until you get, the refund, the yearly refund. So they're going to try to inform people with these letters now that they're sending out. So most families do not need to take any action to get their payment. Normally, the IRS will calculate the payment amount based on the 2020 tax return. If that return is not available, either because it has not yet been filed or it has not yet been processed, the IRS will instead determine the payment amount using 2019. Now, in most circumstances, that should be enough because all they really need is the dependents and to see if they're a qualifying child generally and if they're under the threshold, and there could be an income limitation kind of thing. So if it's the same from 2019 on, not really a problem. But what if you have a situation, again, where you had another dependent or your income level changed that was affecting the threshold in 2020 and you hadn't filed 2019, or you had a change in 2021. So there still could be some kind of reconciling issues that will be taking place as we roll this out. Nothing ever goes perfect, so we'll see what happens. And I'm sure we'll get some advice on how to deal with the issues. So here we go. Eligible families will begin receiving advance payments either by direct deposit or check. The payment will be up to $300 per month for each qualifying child under age 6 and up to $250 per month for each qualifying child ages 6 to 17. So they got this 2 threshold type of thing per child. So you got the amount that's going to be calculated per child. You can think about the calculation more if you think about it in aggregate, meaning like if you think about how you'd actually file the tax return at the end, and I think they're going to take half of the total credit that would be there and pay it out in monthly payments so that you'll still get a credit, I believe, when you file the tax return, because they're only going to be paying out half of it is what I understand at this point in time for the prepayments on these monthly payments. So they got these 2 tiers that are happening now that we can think of as a check-by-check basis, or the 2 tiers with regards to actually filing the tax return, which would happen in 2022. So $300 per month for each qualifying child under age 6 and up to $250 per month for each qualifying child ages 6 to 17. The IRS will issue advanced child tax credit payments on July 15th, August 13th, September 15th, October 15th, November 15th, and December 15th. So it's going to be starting in July every month from July on through December. Eligible families should file tax returns soon. The IRS urges individuals and families who haven't yet filed their 2020 return or 2019 return to do so as soon as possible so they can receive any advance payments they're eligible for. So obviously, if they do not have the information, if they don't have 2019 or 2020, then they're not going to have the information to send the advance payments. And clearly, if you're in that situation too, you might qualify for other credits as well, like the earned income tax credit and the child tax credit. So there's a lot of credits that are more and more refundable these days. So if you haven't filed or know someone that hasn't filed, check it out. The software is even free, at this point possibly, that you can find on the IRS website. So it's worth looking into at least. So filing soon will also ensure that the IRS has their most current banking information as well as key details about qualifying children. These include people who don't normally file a tax return, such as families experiencing homelessness, the rural poor, and other underserved groups. For most people, the fast and easiest way to file a return is by using the free file system available on IRS.gov. So it's still available up until, I think, the extension date, October 15th. So you can look up free file on the IRS website. They didn't give us a link to it here. I don't know why, but you can just search it on IRS.gov and find the free file taking you to those third-party softwares typically having a free filing option with them. Through the summer, the IRS will be adding additional tools and online resources to help with the advanced child tax credits. One of these tools will enable families to unenroll from receiving these advancce payments and instead receive the full amount of the credit when they file their 2021 return next year. So if you don't want the credit and you're just saying, hey, look, I'll just take it when I file the tax return next year, I just want the one-time thing. Maybe you're moving around and you don't want the payments going somewhere or whatever. Then you can opt out of taking the advance payment portion and just file for the tax return like you normally would. So additionally, later this year, individuals and families will also be able to go to the IRS.gov and use a child tax credit update portal to notify IRS of changes in their income, filing status, or number of qualifying children. So that's the big one. That's the one that I think is going to be causing them problems, as we go forward. Because if another child came in the world or another dependent happened in 2000, was born or happened, miraculously appeared in 2021, then in order to get the prepayment, you'd have to notify them of that. And also, if they based it on your prior year income level, you might end up having an income level that phases out the amount of the credit. So if your income level changes, the amount of the credit may change if you're over the threshold. So you'd have to notify them of those things in order to have those updates to the advance. So looks like they're addressing or thinking about that, of course, and maybe we'll get some more information on what to do about it later. But at least they're saying, hey, we've thought about that's something we have thought about. So update their direct deposit information. You can update the direct deposit information because obviously if your payment or you move or something like that and you got the check mailed to you, you don't want them just mailing out checks, to where your last address was or anything. And make other changes to ensure they are receiving the right amounts as quickly as possible. So other tools coming soon. More tools from the IRS we can use. What else do we have? The IRS has created a special advanced child tax credit 2021 page at irs.gov/child tax credit 2021. There's a link to that here. It's designed to provide the most up-to-date information about the credit and the advance payments. In the next few weeks, the page will also feature other useful new online tools, including an interactive child tax credit eligibility tool to help families determine whether they qualify for the advanced child tax credit payments, and another tool, the Child Tax Credit Update Portal, will initially enable anyone who has been determined to be eligible for advance payments and unenroll to opt out of the advance payment program. Later this year, it will allow people to check on the status of their payments, make updates to their information, and be available in Spanish as well. And so more details will be available soon about the online Child Tax Credit Update Portal. So the child tax credit changes. The American Rescue Plan raised the maximum child tax credit in 2021 to $3,600. So now we're looking at 2021. So remember what's happening here. They changed it for 2021, which usually you wouldn't get a benefit from until you filed in 2022 by April 15th. But then they're going to try to take part of that and send out the prepayments. So when you're thinking about what you're going to get in terms of payments, you can think about the prepayment portion, which will be, different by these two layers in age per child, or you can think about it kind of in aggregate, the amount that would be calculated on your 2021 tax return in 2022 by April 15th. And I believe what they're going to do here is take this aggregate numbers and then give you half of it basically in the monthly payments. So you can kind of figure out exactly what's happening if you want to think about it that way. But you can think about it two different ways. You can think about it in aggregate and then what's my monthly payment going to be, the aggregate amounts, what you're going to have to calculate on your 2021 tax return in 2022, and then you're going to have to determine how much they paid you already in prepayments, which I believe should come up to like half of that or something is basically what, and the difference is what you would get when you file the tax return in 2022 for the year 2021. So in any case, we got $3,600 for the qualifying children under the age of 6 and $3,000 per child for qualifying children between ages 6 and 17. So we got this two-tier level. You notice it goes through the age 17 here, so I think that was a change. And obviously the amount is greater. Before 2021, the credit was worth up to $2,000 per eligible child, and age 17-year-olds were not considered qualifying children for the credit. So clearly substantial increase and so beneficial that way. So the new maximum credit is available to taxpayers with a modified adjusted gross income of $75,000 or less for singles. So if you're above $75,000 and single in your adjusted gross income, and remember that this is where they're going to base that on 2020 if they have it, or 2019, even though this credit is tied to 2021. So that's where you get that problem with the phase out that could happen. And it could be different. Your income could be drastically different from 2019 to 2020 and from 2020 to 2021. So if you're close to those phase outs, then, be aware of the weird things that could happen there. And the phase out would be $112,500 or less for head of households. And so that's if you have the qualifying child, you could quite possibly be head of household. And then we got the $150,000 or less for married couples filing a joint return and qualifying widows and widowers. So for most people, modified AGI, adjusted gross income, is the amount shown on line 11 of their 2020 Form 1040 or Form 1040 SR. Above this income threshold, the extra amount above the original $2,000 credit, other $1,000 or $1,600 per child, is reduced by $50 for every extra $1,000 in modified AGI. So it starts to phase out. In other words, after that threshold, the phase out obviously gets somewhat complicated to calculate in and of yourself. Not too bad, but it's hard to kind of visualize. And software is useful there. But it's useful to just know that it's something funny is going to happen once you get over those thresholds, and to be aware of that and think through it if you're in that situation. So in addition, the entire credit is fully refundable for 2021. That means that even if your liability is zero, you still get the money back, a quote refund, end quote, even though it's not a refund at that point, but more of a benefit program. That makes it a lot easier for them to give the prepayment out. So they made it all refundable. So this means that eligible families can get it even if they owe no federal income tax. Before this year, the refundable portion was limited to $1,400 per child. So very substantial increase in the refundability of the credit. The IRS urges community groups, nonprofits, associations, education organizations, and others with connections to people with children to share this critical information about the child tax credit as well as other important benefits. The IRS will be providing in the near future additional materials and information that can be easily shared by social media, email, and other methods. For the most up-to-date information on the child tax credit and the advance payments, visit Advanced Child Tax Credit Payments in 2021. There's a link to that here. There'll be a link to this in the description.